Well, maybe the Minister of Revenue didn't hear the news that this morning the Prime Minister commented on this case, and in fact, he declared Bronfman innocent of all wrongdoing. Just days, in fact, after this minister announced an investigation, the Prime Minister shockingly said that his billionaire buddy and chief Liberal bagman is innocent and pure as the driven snow. Listen. Does the Prime Minister, it seems like the Minister of Revenue recognizes that this is wrong, does the Prime Minister recognize how irresponsible and reckless it is for him to unilaterally say Stephen Bronfman is innocent?
Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, our government is firmly committed to fighting tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. We want to ensure that our tax system is fair and equitable for all Canadians. And that's why I'm very proud of the leadership role that the agency has played on the international stage. We've collaborated with different tax organizations, including for the sharing of tax information. This is an essential tool to protecting the integrity of Canada's tax base. This is why the agency has more than 990 audits and 42 criminal investigations going on concerning international structures.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's reckless words and actions have placed the Revenue Minister in an untenable and an impossible position. The Minister stated that her department is investigating this matter, but before the investigation could barely begin, the Prime Minister has already made his finding of innocence. Wow. This irresponsible behaviour is indefensible. Did anyone advise the Prime Minister of the legal implications of what he just did?
Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, our government is firmly committed to fighting tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. I've said it before and I'll repeat it. I'm very proud of the leadership role that we've taken on the international stage. And I'll say it again, Mr. Speaker. The agency has made historic investments, and this has allowed us to target 4 jurisdictions per year, to have criminal investigations underway. And, Mr. Speaker, no one is above the law. The laws apply to everyone, Mr. Speaker, regardless of one's status in Canada.
Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Speaker, the Prime Minister knows all about investigations. After all, he's under investigation for having broken the rules on his private island getaway, but that hasn't stopped him from interfering in the investigation of his billionaire fundraising friend, Stephen Bronfman, who's been implicated in the Paradise Papers. How can Canadians trust these Liberals to investigate their fundraising friends when the Prime Minister's already appointed himself judge and jury and has issued the acquittal?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, our government is firmly committed to fighting tax evasion and tax avoidance. And, Mr. Speaker, the hypocrisy of our colleagues across the way is really quite stunning. When a former Minister of National Revenue from the Conservative government publicly states that this wasn't even a priority to look into tax havens, I don't think that they should be giving us any lessons. They shouldn't be teaching me or the government anything. Canadians expect a fair and equitable tax system, and that is what we're delivering.
Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, we can understand the Liberals don't like these investigations into their ethics. The Finance Minister has already been found guilty of breaking the Ethics Code by the Ethics Commissioner, and the Prime Minister is under investigation as well. And now the Prime Minister's undermined an active investigation into Liberal billionaire fundraiser Stephen Bronfman. So how can Canadians trust this Liberal government to conduct an impartial investigation when they're more interested in protecting their friends than finding the truth?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, in our first year, we invested nearly $1 billion for the first term. We have a plan, and it is producing results. We are targeting 4 jurisdictions per year. We are working at finalizing the hiring of 100 new auditors. We have 627 cases that have been transferred to criminal investigations, 268 search warrants executed, and 78 convictions. We've tightened the rules for the proactive disclosure program. We have $44 million in fines that have been imposed on people who prepare a tax return.
Order. Most members in all parties are able to sit through a question period, hear things they don't always like, and yet not react. Remember, and the public doesn't like it all when they hear that kind of thing. So I would ask the honourable member for Cypress Hills, Grasslands, and others not to react and not to interrupt. The honourable member for Carleton.
Earlier today, the Revenue Minister said that it is inappropriate for ministers to comment on individual tax cases. She said she will not comment today, tomorrow, or later because the credibility of CRA is at stake.
Yes.
Yet, her boss, the Prime Minister, did exactly that. He publicly exonerated Stephen Bronfman, his top fundraiser, who may be under CRA investigation as part of the leaks into the Paradise Papers. Can the honourable member assure us that CRA will ignore the Prime Minister's directive to acquit Mr. Bronfman?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, the historic investments that were made in the Canada Revenue Agency, nearly $1 billion, show the extent to which we are committed to fighting tax evasion and avoidance. Our government has made efforts to allow the agency to tighten the rules for wealthy Canadians who are not paying their fair share. And we will go after people who exploit loopholes. There have been $44 million of fines, Mr. Speaker, against financial advisors, and there are also criminal investigations underway.
Member for Carleton.
The minister mentions criminal investigations that are underway. Her department announced that it is doing a full review as to whether to pursue such investigations against 3,000 people named in the Paradise Papers, one of whom is the Liberal Party's top fundraiser. But the Prime Minister, the head of the entire government, has already exonerated him and signalled down to CRA that he did nothing wrong. I ask again, will the minister direct CRA to ignore the Prime Minister's political interference in this case?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, in just the last fiscal year, we've had 37 convictions for more than 50 years in prison and $10 million in fines that were imposed by the courts. Thanks to this government's actions, in 2018, Canada may be able to exchange information automatically with other countries in order to identify taxpayers that have accounts abroad. As I said, Mr. Speaker, no one is above the law.